A United Launch Alliance Delta IV Heavy has thundered into orbit, carrying with it a new spy satellite for the National Reconnaissance Office. The NROL-71 mission lifted off from Space Launch Complex 6 at the Vandenberg Air Force Base in California. It was only the third time the 71-metre-tall Delta IV Heavy had launched from the West Coast complex.
Rock, range is green. Second stage, LH2 secure at flight level.
Status check.
Go Delta.
Go NROL-71.
Roll for ignition.
T-minus 10, 9, 8. We should have ignition. 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and liftoff of the United Launch Alliance Delta IV Heavy rocket with NROL-71 for the National Reconnaissance Office.
Vehicles beginning the pitch over maneuver.
You are hearing the voice of Patrick Moore providing launch vehicle ascent data.
Now 20 seconds into flight, seeing good chamber pressure across all three R-68A engines. And core boosters beginning to throttle down to the partial thrust mode as expected. Core boosters reach partial thrust. Chamber pressures continue to look good across all three R-68 engines. Core booster in partial thrust mode. Port and starboard boosters in the full thrust mode. Vehicle is now passing max Q, maximum dynamic pressure. And vehicle is now past Mach 1. Delta IV is now supersonic. Now 1 minute 30 seconds into flight. Chamber pressures on all three R-68A engines continue to look good. Core booster in the partial thrust mode. Port and starboard boosters in the full thrust mode. Launch vehicle is now 12 miles in altitude, traveling at almost 1,600 miles per hour. Chamber pressures on all three engines continue to look good. Coming up on 2 minutes into flight. Second stage attitude control system press valve has been opened. System now pressurizing to flight levels. Response looks good. Chamber pressures on all three engines continue to look good. Vehicle has now gone to closed loop guidance. Vehicle body rates look good. Just over 3 minutes now remaining in the boost phase of flight. Engine operating parameters continue to look good. The Delta IV rocket now weighs just 1/2 of what it did at launch, burning propellant at a rate of almost 5,000 pounds per second. 2 minutes, 55 seconds in, vehicle body rates continue to look good. Now at 3 minutes, vehicle is now passing Mach 5. Vehicle body rates continue to look good. Chamber pressures on the R-68A engines continue to look good. Now coming up on 3 minutes, 20 seconds into flight. Just over 30 seconds now remaining until strap-on booster engine cutoff. Vehicle is now passing Mach 10. Chamber pressures on the R-68A engines continue to look good. And port and starboard booster engines now throttling down to partial thrust in preparation for cutoff as expected. And we have cutoff of the strap-on engines, standing by for separation. And we have good indication of separation of the port and starboard strap-on booster. Core booster is now throttled back up to the full thrust mode. Engine response looks good. 4 minutes, 10 seconds into flight. Chamber pressure on the core booster in the full thrust mode looks good. Upper stage lock system has begun boost phase chill down sequence to begin thermal conditioning of the upper stage engine. Now 1 minute remaining in the boost phase of flight. And upper stage fuel system has begun boost phase chill down. Core booster continues to look good in the full thrust mode. Coming up on 5 minutes into flight, little over 30 seconds now remaining until BECO. Vehicle body rates continue to look good. Chamber pressure continue to look good on the core booster. Now 5 minutes, 20 seconds, standing by for core booster throttle down shortly. Core booster is now throttling down as expected, standing by for BECO. And we have BECO booster engine cutoff, standing by for stage separation. And we have good indication of stage separation. Nozzle extension is now deploying. We have pre-start on the RL-10, standing by for ignition on the RL-10. We have ignition and full thrust on the RL-10. Chamber pressure looks good. Body rates look good. Standing by for payload fairing jettison. And we have good indication of payload fairing jettison. Chamber pressure continue to look good on the RL-10 engine. This first burn of today's mission will last approximately 12 minutes, 6 seconds.
The National Reconnaissance Office operates America's intelligence-gathering spy satellites. Previous West Coast Delta IV Heavy launches have involved Crystal or Keyhole 11 high-resolution imaging satellites, flying to the southwest to place their spy satellites into near-polar sun-synchronous orbits. It's these satellites upon which NASA's Hubble Space Telescope's based. It just points upwards instead of down. In fact, the CIA offered NASA 2 of these Keyhole satellites as Hubble replacements. One of the unusual things about the launch of the NROL-71 spy satellite was that instead of travelling to the southwest, its trajectory was to the southeast. That could indicate that instead of being a keyhole satellite, it could be an electronic signals intelligence or eavesdropping satellite, flying in a Molniya orbit. Molniya orbits are lopsided to allow increased dwell time at higher latitudes and over the poles. A top-secret US Air Force X-37B space shuttle has just completed its 500th day in orbit. The Delta-winged autonomous spaceplane, originally developed to be launched in the payload bay of NASA's now-retired Space Shuttle fleet, is on its 5th classified long-duration mission. All previous flights of the OTV or Orbital Test Vehicle program have established new records, with the last flight of the spacecraft's sister ship staying in orbit for 718 days. That mission, known as OTV-4, was launched from the Cape Canaveral Air Force Station in Florida aboard a United Launch Alliance Atlas V rocket back in May 2015. It finally landed at NASA's Kennedy Space Center at Cape Canaveral in May 2017, marking a combined total of 2,085 days in space for the two space shuttles in the OTV program. The current mission, OTV-5, began back on September 7, 2017, when the spacecraft was launched from the Kennedy Space Center's Launch Complex 39A aboard a SpaceX Falcon 9 rocket. All operations involving the X-37B are highly classified. However, OTV-5 was spotted by amateur satellite hunters last August. It was flying at an altitude of around 320 kilometers. That's low enough to suggest some type of intelligence gathering operation. And that's interesting because the US Air Force claims all OTV flights are designed to test new materials and systems in space, with OTV-5 carrying an advanced structurally embedded thermal spreader developed to test experimental electronics and oscillating heat pipe radiators in the long-duration space environment. But other reports suggest the X-37Bs are actually being used to collect, repair and modify satellites in orbit. And when we say modify satellites, I guess that, doesn't necessarily mean it's got to be American satellites. While the OTV-5 mission remains in orbit, a United Launch Alliance Atlas V rocket is already being prepped for the OTV-6 mission. That's expected to fly from Cape Canaveral before the end of the year.